Have you ever noticed that you feel like a different version of yourself depending on who you're with? In dating, you might be softer. At work, you are hyper competent. And in your friendships, you are the strong one, the therapist. Maybe this isn't about you being too nice. Maybe this is about the subtle ways that you learned to shapeshift in order to stay connected.
Hey, and welcome to Masks Off Inner Freedom for People Pleasers and Perfectionists. This is a podcast for those who are tired of holding it all together. I'm Kim Gross, your host, and if you've ever felt like you're doing all the right things, but still feel anxious, disconnected, or quietly burned out, you're in the right place. Here we talk about the patterns you don't even realize you're living inside of: self-abandonment, overfunctioning, chasing approval, and mistaking productivity for your worth, and more. This isn't about fixing yourself. It's about remembering who you were before you learned to perform, perfect, and please to belong. Each week, we'll unpack the nervous system, the inner critic, and the subtle ways that you learned to disconnect from your true self so you can stop living from pressure and start living from presence. This is your space to take the masks off. So let's begin.
This week, I want to talk about how self-abandonment, over-adapting, shape-shifting, over-functioning, and hyper-responsibility or hyper-vigilance in order to stay connected can show up in your relationships at work and in your friendships. So what I want to first really hone in on, as I just mentioned, that this isn't about there being something wrong with you, or why can't you just be your true self no matter who you're with? Why do you wear the masks in different scenarios? So let's start with dating. And even if you're in a long-term relationship, maybe you can reflect upon how it was for you when you were dating, and then ask yourself, are you still playing out those same patterns now in this long-term relationship that you started way back when? And of course, if you are dating, this is a really good episode for you, because this can be like the wake-up call. So let's talk about what it might look like for us when we have on the mask, when we're dating, and how we can adapt. So again, if you are in a long-term relationship back in the beginning, is it possible that you changed your personality early on? Did you find yourself, or do you still find yourself trying to over-explain yourself at times? Perhaps you downplay your needs, maybe even to the point where you have none, or you don't express them, you don't articulate them, you don't share your needs. Maybe you feel anxious whenever there's any distance. And perhaps you actually even avoid or ignore red flags because you're trying to avoid having the label of being too much or too needy. So here are a couple questions that I invite you to ask yourself when you think about how you show up in dating or in your romantic relationships. So do you feel more anxious about being chosen or picked by this person rather than curious about whether you even like this person? What I mean by that is that the need to be chosen, the need to be accepted, the need to be validated ends up trumping whether you even like this person. You'd rather be in a relationship or be chosen, be liked, feel like you're quote unquote secure, rather than even questioning whether this person is good for you or that you like the person. So that's one thing. The next question is, this is a really important one, do you hide who you truly are in the early stages of dating? So again, if you're dating, are you doing this currently? If you're in a long-term relationship, did you do this early on? Do you still continue to play out this pattern of hiding who you truly are? Finally, do you feel like you have to earn closeness? Do you have to hustle for love, affection, and attention? At the root of these questions is how we can have a fear of rejection. We may have attachment insecurity, and we may feel like we have to perform or earn another person's love. And if that's the case for you, then I can promise you, you're not going to feel fulfilled with that person if that's how the dynamic is set up. I can almost promise you that you don't feel fulfilled. And number two, it most likely points to that you have underneath it all a feeling of or a belief that you are not good enough or you're not worthy enough to have a person that can accept you for who you are fully without any masks on. You can be your true self. And in order for you to draw in or attract that person, you have to be able to feel that way about yourself. So let me just share that and be honest with you. I have been married for almost 33 years, and I can say honestly that when I was first dating my husband, I absolutely did the things I just asked you about. I did not have the confidence, the self-esteem, even though on the outside, it looked like I was uber confident because at the time that I met him, I was in graduate school. So I was getting my master's degree to become a teacher. I already had a 4-year college degree. I was, a straight A student in high school. And if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, I have shared before my long list of achievements and accolades, because that's what an overachiever / perfectionist does most of the time. She has a long list of accolades. So when my husband saw all of these outward external attributes, he was wowed, like, oh my gosh, like she's a good pick. He didn't come from a background where education was valued. He valued hard work, and his family valued hard work. So when he met me, someone in graduate school, I was going for it. someone who is highly educated, he had me on this pedestal. And also because I was playing the role of being low maintenance. And if you didn't have a chance to catch that episode, that one came out last week, where I talk about how we can wear the badge of low maintenance like it's a badge of honor. We feel that it's a strong suit to not be super needy and to not be clingy. Men or guys that talk about ex-girlfriends, like she was too freaking needy, she was clingy, she was so insecure, yada yada yada, and they say that all in a negative way. So I didn't want to be that girl.
I want to pause for a moment and share a resource I created for those of you who are ready to go deeper than a podcast episode. If you're noticing your patterns, the overthinking, the self-abandonment, the inner critic, but you're not sure how to actually shift them, I've created a digital course that walks you through that process step by step. This course is designed to help you understand why you are the way you are from a nervous system and conditioning perspective, and more importantly, how to start responding differently with awareness instead of self-judgment. You can move through it at your own pace, in your own time, and come back to it whenever you need grounding or clarity. If that sounds supportive, you can learn more by visiting my website, www.kimgrosscoaching.com. All the details are there.
So I made sure that I was low maintenance, but low maintenance means also it's code for I'm going to hide or suppress, and I'm not going to assert myself when I have a desire, a thought, a want, or a need. And so, of course, here I am, this girl that he meets that is acquiescing to all the things that he wants to do. I'm letting him carry the conversation, and I'm acting so interested, so intrigued, just the focus is on him. Like, who isn't going to want that, right? So here I was on this pedestal, but then when we were about a year into dating, into our relationship, and my mask started coming off and his mask started coming off, and I showed up more insecure when he was choosing to spend more time with guy friends and I was feeling insecure, it started to become a problem. And so then I had to learn how to, again, push that down, push it aside. And I had to hustle and earn his, well, at least I believed it. I don't know if it was true or not, but this was the story that I had in my mind, that I needed to earn or perform in order to be loved and accepted. So I share this with you because I get it. I know exactly what it feels like to be in that place. I was in that place. And it took a long time for me to unhook from that pattern. I had to do a lot of inner work, a lot of healing to get to the place where I started to allow myself to be me, to be my true self. And I stopped trying to earn his approval or earn his love. So that's how it can show up in dating or relationships. Now, the next area of life could be at work. And you might find yourself where you're over functioning, whether you're at work and you have a full-time job, even in school. If you are listening to this episode and you're in college, let's say maybe you're in graduate school or you're working a job, it can still apply to you, because these patterns that I'm speaking to, they start early. They start early on in your teens. and early 20s. So you may find yourself resonating with what I'm sharing. So it can show up as being over functioning. It can show up as taking on more tasks or taking on what isn't yours. So let's say you work a full-time job, you're in an office setting, and rather than carrying just your load, you start taking on what isn't even yours because it ends up being way too difficult to say no to a coworker or to your boss or whoever. They're like, oh, hey, Kim, do you mind doing this added thing? Now, once in a while, it's fine to help out, right? Be a team player. But if it's this pattern that happens over and over, like you're the go-to person they come to get things done, and you're the one always saying yes, that becomes a problem. And if you are overloaded or you're overwhelmed with all that you have going on in your life, you have so much on your plate, and it's super hard for you to speak up and ask for help. So you just feel like you're drowning even more. And then if you are exhausted and you feel like you need to rest at the end of the day or on a Saturday or a Sunday, you feel guilty for resting. You feel guilty for nourishing yourself and filling your cup. It's like, and then you just keep going, you just keep pouring out all of this energy. And part of that is, if I'm honest, is that there's a belief system in there that you believe the more productive you are, the more worthy you are. And again, most likely this ended up being a pattern that was rooted early on. So again, some questions for you to ask yourself when contemplating these patterns. So number one, if you stopped overperforming, what are you afraid people will see? Let me read that one again. If you stopped overperforming, what are you afraid people would see? The second question to ask yourself, do you believe that you are only as valuable as your output? And then the third question is, who are you without achievement? Again, the root of this issue, what's underneath, is that you believe your worth is tied to how productive or how useful you are. But the truth is, or a caveat to this, is that while having competence and being competent can be a really good thing, it can be a beautiful thing, but it becomes unhealthy or becomes a problem when it's your armor, because then you're utterly exhausted. And so this clearly played out for me as well, because I'm a recovering people pleaser, recovering perfectionist. And although I didn't have a career or work outside the home, I made a decision to stay home and raise my kids. And they are now 26 and 23. So for a long time, I've been home. But I will say this, even though I didn't have a job to go to, a career to go to, the pattern still showed up for me as a mom. I still can remember to this day, especially because my husband was working really hard to grow a business and he was putting in long hours, and I had this belief system that my role as the stay-at-home mom was to do everything to take care of the kids, take care of the house, the grocery shopping, put some type of food on the table, the bills, and whatever else. It was just nonstop. And then on top of it, when my kids were 5 and 2, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. And then talk about feeling guilty for resting. Half the time I felt so awful and sick all the time that whenever I had to lay down on the couch, I just felt so worthless. It's like, how can I just be laying here on the couch when there's so much to do or the kids want to play? And so I 1,000% believed that my worth was tied to how well I could produce or perform as a mother and getting things done. I'm getting shit done around the house, making sure that the house was picked up all the time, like completely picked up, nothing, no clutter at all. And I just was exhausted and probably ended up making the autoimmune disease worse because of the pressure that I put on myself. So when you're feeling utterly exhausted all the time, overwhelmed and burned out, that's when you know that being uber competent is now a mask. So how does it show up with friendships? The way that this can play out in friendships is that you are usually the go-to one. You're the one who is strong. You're more of the emotional caretaker. You show up as the quote-unquote therapist friend, always there listening really well and giving great advice. And you avoid conflict with your friend to keep the peace, to keep harmony. And you rarely share your own struggles. And if you do, you keep it to a minimum, or you don't allow yourself to show up all that vulnerable or as a hot mess, because you have to, again, it's about being competent, the uber competent one, being stable, being the one who has her shit all together. So let me ask you these questions then. When was the last time that you let someone see you as a hot mess? When was the last time you let someone see you either have an ugly cry, be completely vulnerable, not at your best, just in a funk and in a bad way? Could be for some of you, maybe never. Second question, do you know how to even receive support from another? Do you even know how to? And thirdly, if you stopped holding everything together, what do you think would happen? If you stopped holding everything together, the root issue here in these 3 questions and why we show up this way is that there's more safety in your mind. You have a belief system that there is more safety in being needed or being seen as all put together and perfect than to be truly known, to be truly seen. Although you probably have a deep desire to be seen, to be known and understood. It's probably your deepest desire, and yet what you do is push away that which you desire because you have on the mask that you are the one who is the strong one. You're the one that's there. And again, talk about a badge of honor. It's like this, we wear it as a badge of honor, as like, Kim is really strong. She seems like she has everything so put together, so perfect. And she knows just what to say. She's always so kind to just listen. Now, I'm not saying that we don't want to have these characteristics or these traits, that we don't want to show up for our friends. I'm not saying that at all. But what I'm saying is, when it just becomes all one-sided and you're the one who is showing up as the quote unquote therapist friend, then for God's sakes, just start freaking charging them, right? That when it's just the one-sidedness, that's when it becomes an issue, because then when you need support, when you're struggling, when you're feeling down and out or in a funk, you're stuck in a rut or stuck in a problem and you don't know what to do, and you're so unwilling, not used to, or knowing how to receive support, that you feel so alone. So being needed by others feels more secure, and being seen or known feels way more vulnerable. Taking off our masks and letting people see our whole selves, not just the shiny stuff, but the other stuff, the shadow stuff, is vulnerable. So it takes a lot of healing, again, doing the inner work to get to that place. And if you're like, okay, Kim, you keep talking about this inner work, you keep talking about healing, I don't freaking know how, I don't even know where to start. Or maybe you have been to a therapist and maybe you have done some things, but you just still feel like the needle isn't moving. I hear you. It can be tricky and it can take time. And what I can say is that I have a proven process to get from that people-pleasing and perfectionistic prison to more paradise, to having paradise, which is to have freedom. It's about freedom. It's about inner peace. It's about joy. And it's called my 5-step power pathway. If you're curious and you want to know more about it, I have several things. I have my book, which is a good starting point that outlines the 5-step power pathway. I have a digital course that you can take and do on your own time, or you can reach out to me and I can help guide you through the 5-step power pathway and make it more individualized to your needs and your wants. We're always the friend that is there for everyone else, and it's so hard for us to know how to receive support, so hard for us to be seen by others. That's my superpower. That's what I'm so good at doing, is holding space for you and allowing you the opportunity to be seen, to be supported. Know that you don't have to do this alone. And I help you to actually unhook from or heal from all of these patterns. With all of these areas, whether it's dating, it's work, or it's friendship, they're all like different areas of your life, but they are the same nervous system strategy. Because underneath all of what I just talked about and shared is a fear of abandonment, fear of rejection, fear of being seen as too much or too needy, and fear of being exposed as not good enough, not enough. So this isn't about you not caring anymore. This episode isn't about swinging the pendulum the other way and becoming a cold-hearted bitch. I'm not saying that. This is about noticing when and how you disappear, whether it's in romantic relationships, friendships, any relationship really, your work, your career, just noticing how you disappear. And it's about learning how to become your true self. It's about returning to your true self by removing the masks. It's not about becoming super rigid and, like I said, becoming this cold-hearted person. And it's also, as I said, it's about having more inner peace, more joy, and more freedom. So I'm going to ask you to think about this week. Where are you willing to maybe just take up 5% more space? Can you perhaps see yourself taking up a little bit more space in your friendships or your romantic relationship? And what can you practice saying or doing instead of shape-shifting? And then finally, here are a couple other questions for you to contemplate if you are a journaler, as I am. I love to journal, and this is a really good exercise and activity to help you start the healing process or continue if you've been on this journey for a while. And if you are not a journaler, just contemplate these questions. 1, in which area of your life do you feel you are wearing the mask the most? 2, what version of yourself do you perform in the most? Is it dating, work, or friendship? Maybe it's all 3. I don't know. Number 3, what are you afraid would happen if you stopped over adapting? Where did you learn that love requires you to perform, to earn, or hustle? And finally, the 5th question to think about is, what would self-respect look like? Not in theory, but in practicality. So finally, if you have any questions about anything that I shared, if this is new for you and you're just wanting to ask a simple question, I invite you to put it in the comments section if you are watching this on YouTube. And if you're listening on your favorite audio platform, then you can always just send me an email, which is kim@kimgrosscoaching.com. And all this information is in the show notes, where you can just look quickly and grab that and shoot me an email, ask me your questions, ask away. I'm hoping that we can have more of a community feel. And that's why, so if you have questions, if you have comments, you want to share, like, oh my God, Kim, I hear you. I was listening to your story about how you showed up with your husband or as a mom, and I get it. Just share. I would love to connect and feel like a community. So aside from that, I hope that you all have a great week, and I'll see you very soon.
As we wrap up today's episode, I just want to say thank you for being here and for taking this time for yourself. If this episode resonated with you, I'd really appreciate it if you would subscribe to the podcast or leave a review. Even a quick star rating helps more people find this space and reminds the algorithms that these conversations matter. And I'd love to hear from you. If you have a question, a takeaway, or something that came up while you were listening, leave a comment or send it in. Let's keep the conversation going. This podcast isn't meant to be a one-way street. It's meant to feel like a community. If you want to learn more about me, my work, or the ways we can go deeper together, you can visit my website. All the details are there. Until next time, take a breath, take the mask off, and be gentle with yourself. I'll see you soon.